Welcome to the Shorten Anime channel. Today we'll dive into the latest episode of The Great Ruler. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to support the channel. The Great Ruler Season 1, Episode 10. When Mu-Chen's voice rang out in the training ground, the lively atmosphere suddenly quieted down. Then countless astonished eyes remained fixed on him. Who would have imagined that Mu-Chen would actually take the initiative to fight with Luotong? Could it be that he did not know that the latter was always finding an opportunity to trouble him? Why would he go on his own and charge at him now? Chen, what is Mu-Chen doing? That Luotong isn't that easy to deal with. Mo Ling went up to Tang Chen and asked with a serious expression as he stared at Mu-Chen's back. Tang Chen shook her head. Although her eyes showed a bit of worry, she did not reveal it. She only let out a shallow laugh and said, "It's fine, he knows what he is doing." Mo Ling could only give a bitter smile as he nodded. This duel followed the rules. Even if he wanted to speak out and help him, he could not step in. He can only hope that Mu-Chen had a bit of skill. Otherwise, Luotong probably would not let go of this opportunity of tormenting him. Ho ho! While being surrounded in many gazes from nearby, Luotong was stunned. His originally overcast face slowly turned cold. From his mouth, a cold laugh slowly escaped his lips. Looks like you believe that you've gotten used to the place after staying at the Heaven class for the past few days? So you can finally begin to act arrogant? Luotong stood up. His eyes were coldly fixed on Mu-Chen. What are you saying? I simply want to have a little duel with you. Mu-Chen chuckled with a gentle smile as he spoke. Also, isn't it something natural for a senior to have a little duel with newcomers? That's what Zhang Li said earlier. Over at the side, Zhang Li's facial color changed unnaturally after he heard Mu-Chen mentioning him. However, he deliberately pretended to be fierce as he glared at Mu-Chen. In his heart, he wondered why this guy would dare to cause trouble for Luotong. Could it be that he didn't know that Luotong had the strength of a spiritual movement stage late phase? Luotong stared at Mu-Chen's handsome face, which wore a gentle smile. In his heart, however, he was extremely furious. That smile seemed like it was mocking him, but he also coldly grinned and said, "Since you have that desire, then as your senior, I should agree to it. Might as well. Might as well." After saying those three words, the coldness in Luotong's eyes was undisguised. From the surface of his body, a tyrannical fluctuation was emitted as spiritual energy slowly entwined and escaped from his body. The students nearby spectating all quickly moved back a bit as if they were afraid that they would be caught in it. Mu-Chen extended his fists. "Please." Luotong did not hold back at all. As the color of his face darkened, he released his spiritual energy without reservation. He took a step forward and shot forward like an arrow. Accompanied with the sound of an explosion, his fist blasted outwards and it relentlessly charged towards Mu-Chen. When the spectators saw how ferocious Luotong was, they were shocked. How was this a little duel? Luotong obviously had the intention to beat up Mu-Chen. Mu-Chen looked at the quickly approaching Luotong. However, he did not have any intention of fleeing or hiding. A dark black spiritual energy wrapped around his fist. He then took on a stance to take the blow head-on and collided directly against Luotong. He wanted to get a good grasp on the strength of a spiritual movement stage late phase. A low sound reverberated out as their fists collided heavily. Both parties' spiritual energy smashed against each other and formed energy waves. It instantly caused strong whirls of air to appear around them. The energy waves swept across the area, and the two figures were both shaken. Mu-Chen trembled and was pushed back a number of steps. On the other hand, Luotong was only pushed back one step. It was evident that Luotong had the upper hand in a direct confrontation. Regardless of how impressive your spiritual energy is, there will still be this difference in level when facing against me. Even if I suppress you, I can suppress you to death. Luotong's eyes were cold. He was in the spiritual movement stage late phase, while Mu-Chen was only in the middle phase. Although it might seem like a small difference, the difference was enough to oppress the other. Didn't your father tell you to just swallow your pride and behave if you don't have the capability? Since you've taken the initiative to come, you're bound to lose face. After hearing this, Mu-Chen gently laughed as he said, "While I was learning how to endure, you were still in school being a good little boy. And the reason why I need to endure is because I met someone I couldn't beat at that point of time. But how regretful in my eyes, you don't amount to much. Then let me tell you, What kind of price you will need to pay today? A hint of dreariness appeared in Luo Tong's eyes. He extended two fingers, forming it into a blade as a dark green energy violently surged out. At his fingertips, a sword blade seemed to appear and disappear as it emitted out a sharp fluctuation. Great Luo's sword technique? Upon seeing the glowing green sword tip emerging from Luo Tong's fingers, their expression changed and they shouted in shock. The Luo territory's Great Luo's sword technique? Mu Chen's gaze swept past the glowing green blade. Spiritual tier low rank, Great Luo's sword technique. This is the technique that made the Luo territory's territory lord famous. He never imagined that Luo Tong would have trained in it. However, judging from its appearance, it wasn't up to standard yet. However, it was already a very impressive feat to execute it at the spiritual movement stage. Swoosh! Luo Tong didn't give Mu Chen any time to think. He had a cold gaze as his body charged forward. His fingers were like a long sword. As his fingers cut through the air, he violently stabbed towards Mu Chen. Wherever the blade passed, the air seemed as if it was torn apart. Mu Chen's eyes were focused solely at sword tip coming from the violent stab. This sharpness was enough to give someone goosebumps. He slowly clenched his right hand. A dark black spiritual energy circulated through his body. It was infused endlessly into the center of Mu Chen's right palm. The looming black seal in his palm gradually emerged at this moment. A cold fluctuation poured out. A dark black light fiercely emitted out from Mu Chen's palm. At this moment, Mu Chen seemed to be holding a black sun. The cold fluctuation coming from it made others alarmed. Mu Chen stamped with his foot and his figure leaped forward like a leopard. He chose not to dodge and met directly against Luo Tong's fierce and aggressive move. The spectators were all dumbfounded when they saw this scene. Go to hell! Luo Tong shouted out gravely. The glowing green sword did not slow down as it streaked forward like a lightning towards Mu Chen's throat. The fist, which contained a dense black light, was also thrusted forward at the same time. A black light, which was like a sun, directly collided against the glowing green sword tip. Violent spiritual energy fluctuations exploded out. It felt as if the ground quivered as well. However, the eyes of the students remained fixated at the place where the green sword tip collided with the black light. Break! Mu Chen's eyes flashed a cold light. Within his Orsia, spiritual energy was being poured out without restraint. The black seal also violently trembled in the center of the palm. It actually appeared in front of his fist and landed heavily onto the glowing green sword tip. Kacha! The black seal blasted out, causing the glowing green sword tip to pause for a moment. Then everybody heard a slight breaking sound. Soon after that, they widened their eyes as cracks appeared on the glowing green sword tip. In the end, the glowing green sword tip shattered completely. A hint of horror appeared within Luo Tong's eyes as his body shot back helplessly. Mu Chen did not follow up with an attack. The black seal vanished as he flipped his palm. Moreover, the fluctuations also gradually dissipated. However, the spectators didn't make a single sound. They stared in astonishment at the slender figure. It was obvious the unthinkable had just happened. Mu Chen not only blocked Luo Tong's greatest skill, he even managed to force him to pull back. How could this be? Zhongli and Teng Yang were stunned as watched this scene happen. Luo Tong, who was a spiritual movement stage late phase, actually lost to Mu Chen, who was only a spiritual movement stage middle phase. As Mo Ling witnessed this scene, his heart was flustered. Tang Chener let out a breath of relief and she relaxed her slender hand. This guy is truly impressive. Senior Luo Tong, thank you. Mu Chen cupped his hands at Luo Tong as he chuckled. However, his eyes were fixed on his own palm. The black seal has faded quite a bit. If it's just based on power, this limitless death seal would not be at the level of a common tier high rank. It might only be a common tier because the requirement on having a certain degree of domineering spiritual energy was too high. However, the consumption of spiritual energy was enormous for the limitless death seal. The earlier attack had consumed half of his Orasia's spiritual energy. Although it was his first time controlling it, so it was not perfect, even a spiritual tier low rank spiritual arts can't compare to its consumption. Luo Tong's face turned pale. He didn't think that the results would end up like this, so he couldn't speak for a few moments. Mu Chen's earlier aggressive attack shocked him greatly. In that instant, he felt a great danger. This guy actually had such a powerful spiritual art. Did his father prepare this for him? Luo Tong gritted his teeth as he thought. He had practiced this great Luo's sword technique for a very long time before it came to fruition. Yet he still lost to Mu Chen. Just how many tricks did he have? Muchen did not care about Luo Tong, who was reading too much in it. He achieved his goal of frightening Luo Tong. This guy will probably restrain himself in the future. Therefore, he clapped his hands and turned away to leave. Muchen, come with me for a bit. As he turned away, a faint voice suddenly appeared from nearby. He was slightly shocked, and he saw Teacher Mo standing not so far away from him as he tilted his head over. Muchen was stunned. He exchanged gazes with Tang Xianer for a moment. Under the watch of many students, he hesitated for a moment before following Teacher Mo. Upon nearing a quiet forest, Teacher Mo stopped walking. Then he turned his body and narrowed his eyes. His voice gradually became more severe, and he said, "You've trained in the Limitless Death Seal?" Muchen stared at the serious expression on Teacher Mo's face. He could not help but let out a hollow laugh. Then he nodded his head. With the latter's spirit stage strength, it was obvious that he could not hide it from him. "You shouldn't have the right to train in it yet," Teacher Mo said in a deep voice. Muchen blinked, but he did not speak. He had already trained in it already. Could it be that he'll make him return it back? Teacher Mo stared at Muchen's face. His serious expression faltered for a moment. It seems that this boy did not care about his authority. He could only shake his head helplessly and say, "Can you not be this reckless? I only wanted to try it out. If there are any problems, I will immediately stop training in it. I care about my life more than anyone else." Muchen smiled and replied. Teacher Mo could only stare at him sourly. He hesitated for a moment before saying, "Did you succeed?" "I succeeded in its initial step." Muchen stretched out his hand. In the center of his palm, a black seal appeared vaguely. Teacher Mo stared at the black seal in Muchen's hand. The corner of his lips twitched slightly. Although he was aware of it earlier, his heart could not help but tremble when he saw that Muchen was able to successfully train in this limitless death seal in such a short period of time. This talent, as expected from the person who obtained the qualifications for the spiritual road. "Are you interested in this limitless death seal?" Teacher Mo glanced at Muchen. Ever since he brought Muchen to the spiritual arts room heaven level, he discovered that Muchen took a fancy to this spiritual art. "I could feel that this spiritual art isn't that simple." Muchen thought for a moment before he spoke. Although this spiritual art may only seem to be a common tier high rank, he could faintly feel that something was a bit off with it. "Oh?" Teacher Mo lifted an eyebrow and stared at Muchen. "It feels that this limitless death seal seems to carry a great potential. The training on the surface seems to be the initial step. I feel that there should be some sort of method to make this limitless death seal even stronger." Muchen muttered to himself. Teacher Mo slightly narrowed his eyes. A trace of surprise surged through his eyes. Muchen stared at Teacher Mo and suddenly let out a smile. He said with a cunning voice, "Teacher Mo should be quite familiar with the limitless death seal, right? From what I can tell, you seem to be quite interested in it." Teacher Mo glanced at Muchen, who was like a sly fox. He helplessly nodded his head and said, "I too have trained in this limitless death seal." As he said this, he extended out his palm. In the center of his palm, a black seal also appeared on it. However, the one that came from Teacher Mo was a lot more completely and darker than the black seal at the center of Muchen's hand. The cold-chill fluctuation also far surpassed the one that Muchen formed. Muchen stared at the black seal in Teacher Mo's hand in shock. He gently smiled as he said, "It really is just like I expected. This spiritual art really isn't that simple. Otherwise, why would Teacher Mo select it?" Teacher Mo is a genuine powerhouse at the spirit stage level. He is ranked high up in the northern spiritual realm. If the limitless death seal was only just an ordinary common tier spiritual art, he would not go train in it. "You rascal!" Teacher Mo gave off a bitter laugh. This boy is quite slippery. He thought for a moment and slowly said, "Do you want to know how to let the limitless death seal reveal its true power?" Muchen's eyes lit up. He nodded his head heavily. "It's simple." Teacher Mo chuckled and he extended his left hand over as well. Then Muchen was astonished as he noticed that there was an exactly the same black seal at the center of Teacher Mo's left palm. So with the limitless death seal, you could form more than one death seals. Muchen's eyes glowed. A touch of excitement suddenly appeared on his face. He stared heatedly at Teacher Mo and murmured, "The reason why there weren't any other steps for training the limitless death seal isn't because there weren't any. It is because the amazing point of the death seal is that you could form multiple death seals. By overlapping the death seals, you will be able to reveal its true power?" Teacher Mo nodded and said, However, the Limitless Death Seal has a harsh requirement for spiritual energy. I have tried my best, yet I was only able to form 2 seals. As for the Death Seals, the more you have, the more terrifying the backlash from the impact would be. I had once attempted to form the 3rd Death Seal, but I was nearly gravely injured by its shock. After that, I did not dare to try it again. Muchen also had the same feeling. When he formed the 1st Death Seal, he went through great lengths just to withstand the impact coming from the formation of the seal. He really did not know if he could endure the 2nd seal being formed. Right now, you have successfully formed the 1st Death Seal. Do not rush to condense the 2nd seal, just so an accident wouldn't occur, Teacher Mo warned him. Muchen nodded. Although he longed for the true power of the Limitless Death Seal, he also understood there were no benefits for being too ambitious. Seeing this, Teacher Mo did not say anything more and waved his hand. Muchen immediately turned and left. The moment he turned his head around, he saw Tang Xianer waiting for him. "Are you all right? Did Teacher Mo do anything to you?" Tang Xianer immediately asked these questions when she saw Muchen coming out. After all, Muchen did break the rules a bit when he learned the Limitless Death Seal. Therefore, she was worried that he would be punished. Muchen smiled as he shook his head. Then he lowered his head and looked at the black seal in his palm. His heart heated up. This Limitless Death Seal was truly extraordinary. It looks like he would have to put more effort into it in the future. In the middle of the night, Muchen was quietly sitting cross-legged. His hands were changing seals again. A trace of dark black spiritual energy circulated at the tips of his fingers. Kacha. However, when the dark black spiritual energy weaved together and attempted to form a seal, the spiritual energy suddenly went out of control and the fluctuation dissipated away. Muchen stared at his empty palm. He shook his head helplessly. Just earlier, he attempted to see if he could form the 2nd seal, but the results were obvious. He failed. It seems that the difficulty for the 2nd Death Seal was much harder than the first one. "Looks like I can only slowly do this," Muchen muttered to himself. Then he recovered his mind and closed his eyes. He began to circulate the Great Pagoda art and absorb the spiritual aura from the world. In the end, the spiritual aura turned into dark black spiritual energy and entered his auracea. In addition to this, Muchen would also separate a bit of his spiritual energy and let it flow down the meridians in his arm in order to nurture the Black Death Seal. It made the color of the Black Seal become deeper. Because of the fight with Luo Tong yesterday at the training grounds, Muchen's reputation also spread out within the East Branch Heaven class. The veteran students did not dare underestimate this newbie, who just rose up. Also, Tan Qingshan made others understand that he wasn't a seemingly quiet boy who would be pushed around with his fierce attitude yesterday. Therefore, nobody came to trouble him in the days after. Muchen had truly obtained peace and quiet. During this peaceful time, Muchen began to focus his efforts into cultivation. He would be at the cultivation field to borrow the 3rd-rank Spirit Convergence Array at daytime. The spiritual energy within his auracea became denser and denser as the days passed. When it was nighttime, he would nurture the Limitless Death Seal on his palm. He also gradually attempted to form the 2nd Death Seal, but without any exception, he failed. But despite the repeated failures, Muchen did not give up. He could vaguely feel that he was getting more proficient in the seal method for forming the Limitless Death Seal through the repeated failures. His control at the Limitless Death Seal became more and more smoothly. The feeling of him getting closer and closer to success made Muchen experience a little bit of joy. The time quietly went on, and in a blink of an eye, approximately half a month passed. During this half a month, the spiritual energy inside Muchen's auracea became denser and denser. Although he had not advanced to the spiritual movement stage late phase, it was definitely more powerful than half a month ago. While his spiritual energy progressed, Muchen's training in the Limitless Death Seal also became more proficient. His control over the 1st Death Seal reached a certain degree of precision. It was not like when he was facing against Luo Tong and would cause unnecessary consumption. As for the condensation of the 2nd Death Seal, Muchen could faintly feel that he had reached it. However, his spiritual energy wasn't enough, so he was not able to condense it successfully. This made him feel a bit regretful. In the cultivation field, when Muchen heard that the bell ringing, which represented that the class was over, he opened his eyes and began to feel the spiritual energy surging in his auracea. He smiled gently and stretched. "Hey!" A sweet voice came from beside him. Muchen tilted his head. He only noticed Tang Qianer smiling as she stared at him with anticipation. "What is it?" Muchen asked. We will be heading for training at the Northern Spiritual Field tomorrow. Tang Qianer smiled as she said, "We're heading out tomorrow?" Mu Chen paused for a moment before he smiled and nodded his head. He was completely immersed in his training during this time, so he nearly forgot about the time. However, it was still fine. Seeing that he could not form the second death seal because he did not have enough spiritual energy. If he was able to find some elixirs in the Northern Spiritual Field, it would solve his pressing problem. You have to work harder during this time's Northern Spiritual Field training. It is said that the West Branch's Liu Mubai will also participate. The one that formed a team with him is the West Branch's Hong Ling. We can't lose to them, Tang Qianer said seriously. Liu Mubai, huh? Mu Chen let out a slight smile. That person is the genuine #1 in the Northern Spiritual Academy. And are they going to confront each other for the first time during this Northern Spiritual Field training? How interesting. Mu Chen's black eyes shined. He was not afraid of anyone in the spiritual road, and it was exactly the same in the Northern Spiritual Realm. That wraps up the content for today's episode. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel to get notifications for the next episode. For now, goodbye, and see you next time.